जनाब कुरैशी साहब, पवन जिंदल जी, मिस्टर अनिल राय, मिसेस मालविका राय, सुजाता शाही, Dr. Shudha Shahi, Kakuli Sen, faculty members of this esteemed institution, and most importantly, all the young people who are passing out today, because for them it is the historical day for them. It's a milestone for them, and I must say that it's really a privilege to address the first convocation, because along with you lot who are passing out, my name might also be remembered at the same time. So thank you for that. It's always a pleasure, and it really is. Now in this position, I've had the occasion to visit several universities and convocations and so on. But it's also so nice to see a convocation and a set of faculty members which is hugely dominated by women. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, if I got the names right, then all the medal winners are probably girls. So this is something that I hope that this institute will continue with, and will be a trailblazer going forward. And it was also wonderful to note that you followed a multidisciplinary and holistic approach, and in some sense anticipated the national education policy. What more can it? What better can it be? Because I think this is the way we have to go forward. Because an extreme commercialization or professionalization of education is not the building of the human mind. Because what you need is something much broader, much bigger, and that can only happen if you've got a holistic education system which looks after both your intelligence quotient as well as, Dr. Shahi said, the emotional coefficient. And I like the word mindfulness that you said. So congratulations for that. Friends, I have to point out that the Indian higher education system is the third largest in the world, behind the US and China. And it has seen phenomenal growth in the last 10 years. The gross enrollment ratio in the higher education system increased from 15% in 2009-10 to 27% now in 1920, and is going up. And the number of students is a mind-boggling number, has increased from 20 million to 38 million. 3.8 crore of our children are in this higher education system. And as you know, the National Education Policy has the objective of reaching this gross enrollment ratio to 50% by, I think, 2035, if I'm not mistaken. And these are, of course, very laudable achievements. And I think we've come a very long way from where we were when we got our independence 75 years ago. And we have seen a huge transformation. But, and so therefore we just need to acknowledge that, recognize that, and feel proud of it. But at the same time, I hope all of you will agree that there's miles to go before what we can achieve. And I think I'll be failing in my duty as somebody who presides over Niti Aayog, which is supposed to look after the long-term interest and direction of the country and the economy, if I didn't point out the miles that we have to cover going forward. And some of the statistics are that our researchers per million are 216 in India, 1,200 in China, and 4,300 in the US. That's the researchers per million. Our research and development expenditure is still 0.8% of GDP and is coming down in the last few years. It's 2.11 in China and 2.7 in the US and 3.8 in Korea. That's our, and by the way, of this 0.8% of GDP, 80% is spent by the government and the public sector agencies, the research labs and the CSIR. Our private sector somehow has not found it worthwhile to invest in R&D, and which is what explains, therefore, the lower number of researchers in this country. We're just not encouraged. I mean, I don't know how and why I did 2 PhDs, Dr. Shai, but the point, it must have been to escapism from coming into the real world. But the fact is that there is no incentive in our country really for people to do research, because the private sector is simply shy of doing this. And I think it will be a very good research study and a project for this institute and for the university to figure out as to why this is so. Why is it that we are so bereft of original product innovations in this country, which is what we have process innovation, but most of the time, our eyes are firmly on the bottom line and nothing else but the bottom line. But the time for that is gone. In any case, now you have to follow a triple bottom line, which is the financial, the societal, and the climate and the environmental. How many of us are doing that? And this is a country with a tradition of innovations, which has led the world. I mean, Ayurveda, and so on. I mean, Shushruta, Charak, Sangadhar. They're all names from which people have learned, whether it's algebra or trigonometry or, whatever. People had come here to learn that. But I haven't been able to figure it out. And I appeal to you, to the young minds, to tell me one day, why is it that our private sector is not keen on doing the research, which, by the way, is the only, I repeat, which is the only means to go ahead in this competitive world and nothing else. And so I think that's something that we need to look at. Our annual research publications, therefore, as a result, are 1.48 lakhs. In China, they are already 4.83 lakhs, and they were behind us in 1991. I know that because I haven't got the numbers. And in US, it's 6.4 lakhs. So we are not even a fourth of what the US is at the moment. And our number of patent applications, again where China was behind us, is about 15,000 here, 12 lakh in China, and 2.93 lakhs in the US. China has left behind the US in this regard. So I cite these numbers to you, and I cite these figures to you to say that this will not do. Business as usual will just simply not do, because the new era of extreme technological turbulence is now upon us. You call it Industry 0.4, you call it Industry 0.5, you call it artificial intelligence, robotics, call it what you may, but the fact is that today we are faced with a technological change and turbulence which is much greater than what you had in the 3 other earlier industrial revolutions. Whether it was the industrial technological revolution, whether it was the steam, or it was mass production, assembly line, or whether it was internet, it will just completely fade away in the presence of what we've got today in the Internet of Things and so on. Because what you have today is the prospect that if we don't develop and educate and become and get there on our research and higher education, machines will easily replace us. They're already replacing us. It's clear. I invite you to read a book on AI superpowers by Kai-Fuk Lee, who is telling us that the AI now is so advanced that the computer is beating the best mind in China in chess. Not only chess, but they've already got better off in the game of Go or Wai Wu, which is a Chinese game where you have 19 squares on all sides, not just 8. And there are no set pieces. It's just you can use as many pieces. It's the most complex game that you saw. I was introduced to it when I was in Manila working for the ADB. It was thought impossible for a machine to do so, but now they've gotten the better of us there. So if we don't develop ourselves, if we don't sharpen our edges, if we don't put an extra effort on the higher learning, on education, on research, on taking our children forward in that direction, and making them aware of all of this, then I think we will see a situation where we will see huge dissatisfaction. ये हम लोगों को बिल्कुल याद रखने की बात है, और बिल्कुल मैं इस पर जितना जोर दूं उतना कम है कि आज अगर हमने इस पर तवज्जो नहीं दी, अगर आज हमने इस पर ध्यान नहीं दिया, तो बहुत जल्दी ऐसा हो जाएगा कि हमारे जो बच्चे यूनिवर्सिटी से निकल रहे हैं डिग्रीज लेके, उनको कहीं मेरे ख्याल में नौकरी मिलने की गुंजाइश ही नहीं रहेगी. और आई एम सेइंग दिस ऑल्सो बिकॉज already the AICT number is that 47% of our engineering and technical education children who are graduating are unemployable already at this stage. So you can think of what will happen if you don't give enough attention to the right kind of cutting edge technology and cutting edge education that we've got here. I can't emphasize it enough, and I'm glad to see that the university, the IIM, will use modern technology, will use distant learning, will use computers and MOOCs and all of that to impart the best possible language education, which is globally front line to the children who are studying here. The three problems, the traditional problems in Indian education from times perennial almost have been access, equity and quality. And I'm afraid these three remain still the problems that we've got. And I think it's for us as a challenge, and the national education policy, the implementation of the national education policy, which as I said aims to get 50% gross enrollment ratio. The aim of that shouldn't only be the gross enrollment ratio, but also the gross enrollment ratio of a kind which will produce children who could be employable anywhere in the world. And that is what we should be doing. Access, I think, cannot be achieved by the brick and mortar buildings any longer. We'll have to go to brick plus click, and that's the model that we've got to have. We've got to have education which is open-ended, which has got multiple exits and multiple entry points, so that children can do as they want to do, because given their circumstances, and they shouldn't be forced to do 4 years in a row or whatever number of years that you've got, and as is the case in many advanced economies and many advanced countries. And I think it is up to us, the faculty here and the management, to ensure that we move steadily towards the click plus brick model. Even if we can afford a click and mortar building, that's not the point. I went to the National University of Singapore, and they can easily afford the best buildings and the best classrooms. No, but they had the facility for children to attend their classes under the trees in the university, and they had the facility for every student to go back to what the lecture had been at any point of time, because they could access it out of the digital library. That's the way to do it, And I think the days of building physical libraries, the days of building physical buildings, etc., will soon be behind us. But I do not for a moment propose that we should be only click and we should be only digital. I've had enough of that in the last 2 years, and I don't think that serves any purpose, because social interaction is also a must, and which we must have. But I think the click plus brick will be the thing to go forward, because if we want to achieve 50% GER, we need 35 million additional seats in this country. They can't come out of the physical model. They have to come out of the distance learning, etc., that we are talking about. And at the moment, only 10.6% of our students are enrolled in distance mode learning. I think this number probably needs to be tripled as we go forward if we want to achieve the access. On the quality of education, I think the research output in the country, as per the All India Survey of Higher Education, is that only 2.5% of our higher education institutions offer research and PhDs. And I think this has to just go up, and the quality. And more importantly, perhaps, and I'm sure it doesn't apply to this university or the institute at all, the quality of the teaching faculty has to improve significantly. And I think this is something which has to be done, not only in terms of professional skills and expertise, but I dare say also in the realm of reviving the tradition of the Guru, which was the moral and the ethical figure that the students appeal to. That's disappearing very quickly, and I'm really sad about that, because we keep mouthing Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Deva, but the point is that yes, the children have to imbibe that, but the faculty has to earn for the children to imbibe that. And that's the training of the faculty that I would like to see. Again, a holistic, a rounded, ethical, value-based, faculty which can set ideals and models for the children to follow. So that's, I can go on about quality, but I just wanted to emphasize those two things. One is frontline research, and the two is the quality of the faculty that we've got in our institutes. And I think it's up to the universities themselves to ensure that their faculty is in a process of continuous learning, constant learning all the time. And the learning can never stop. The one thing that I say to myself is that I'll be the luckiest person if I keep learning to the last day of my life. And that's the way it can be for the faculty. You can't stop having done an MA or a PhD and so on. You've got to learn because things are changing very much by, all the time. And it's a pity to see that a large number of PhD seats are vacant even in our premier institutes, like the IITs and the IIMs and so on, which is not something that we need to do. Friends, at the end, I must sort of say that the national education policy, which has opened a huge window of opportunity for India to leapfrog into the new age, for India to produce the children, produce the talent that is required for building a new India, and for India to become, and I say this with some caution, for India to become a knowledge superpower, because knowledge economy is what we will have tomorrow with the Industry 4.0 and the artificial intelligence and so on. But it's more real than just a wish, because by the time my young friends who are passing out today reach the prime of their life, which is 30 years down the road, if their average age is about 20 or let's say 25 years down the road, which will be something like 2045, 2047, India will actually be the second, if not surely the third largest economy in the world. And you would be expected to play a global role. The people will look towards you as Indians to play a role on the global stage. As somebody said, you have to be, from today, learn to become global citizens. You have to be aware not only of your local surroundings, and this is where I should have mentioned earlier, I'm a great advocate of Nai Taaleem, which was brought together by Dr. Zakir Hussain Sahab and so on, which insisted on anchoring you in the local environment and then to reach out to the global horizons that you have. But this is what you have to do, because you will be expected to do that as a global economic power in 2047 or 2050, when you will be at the prime of your life. But there, I think, being a global citizen, you have to remember, and I emphasize it again, that you can't be a global citizen without carrying with you the right kind of values and ethics, which is the respect for others, which is the respect for everybody else, maybe thinking that there is no other because we are all part of the same Brahm, as it were, and relating with them at that level. But without those ethical and moral values and all that we have learned from our past, I don't think we'll be able to become global citizens. But the most important thing for me is that, and I have experienced this in my life, and I can tell you that you can be a global citizen and you can learn from every opportunity that this world offers you if you have your anchors very deep into your own traditions and into your own cultures. Into your own cultures which have been syncretic, which are in your own cultures which have always emphasized knowledge, which has always emphasized the respect for the teacher, which has always emphasized the respect for the elders. So I think it's time at the moment, it is this time. ये मेरी आप सबसे बहुत प्रार्थना है और इल्तिजा है, वो ये कि आज पास होते समय आप इस बात का एक तरह से प्रण करें कि आप अपने इस देश की, अपने इस मुल्क की जो बहुत ही प्राचीन सभ्यता है, उस पर और गौर करेंगे और उससे सीखेंगे और उसमें बिल्कुल एक तरह से मजबूती से जड़ें पकड़ लेंगे, क्योंकि अगर वो नहीं पकड़ी तो आपकी नाव तूफानों के थपेड़ों से बह जाएगी और आप अपने संबल तक, अपने किनारे तक नहीं पहुंच पाएंगे। आपको बहुत बहुत मुबारकबाद और शुभकामनाएं। थैंक यू।